Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, I won't say tonight, today, we're doing something a little bit different, a little more interesting. My friend, Risa Simon, is here. This is Risa's record setting fourth time with us, and we're already talking about it next time. So we're going to get a little bit of Risa. Risa is here, and the last time that Risa was on, she suggested to me that perhaps she should interview me on my broadcast so that people could learn a little bit more about my kidney story and the things that I do. And I agreed to that. So today I'm actually the guest for a change, and Risa Simon is your host. As always, I did research on myself, believe it or not, and the the research is in the comments to the broadcast, which is pinned to the top of my Facebook page. So if you want to drill down on your Uncle Jim a little bit, you can do that. I list all the places that I share kidney stories and information, links to my groups and platforms, et cetera, that you can find some of the stuff that I've written and some of the other appearances uh, that I've made. So, um, any rate, the other thing I want to say is we're going a little bit early today. This is 12 noon Central Standard Time. By the time our normal broadcast time rolls around tonight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will have the replay posted. So don't don't feel that you're missing anything. And of course, I'll post the replay to all the usual places, and uh, by tomorrow it'll be all over the internet. So you can check out the replay if you missed it. The only thing I ask is please like and share, and please share to your personal page so the people can see it, including non-kidney people, right? Because after all, if we're going to ask people to donate a kidney, we have to find people that are eligible to do that. And so that's what we're trying to do. But at any rate, the broadcast today is all about Risa asking me questions. Now, I wanted to say something about that before we start. I did not submit any questions to Risa. I did not tell Risa what she could and couldn't ask. There are no limits as far as I'm concerned. So all the questions today come from her. I wanted to give an authentic interview, which is what she asked me to do. So, hopefully your Uncle Jim's on his game today and I can do a good job of answering questions. So, with that, Miss Arisa, I'm going to turn the broadcast over to you.
Well, thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. Gosh, I just am so pleased that Jim agreed to do this. For all of you watching either live now or on the recording, you've been watching and not only watching Jim on these broadcasts, but you've been following him on social media and you know how committed he is. Or you're an ambassador and an advocate and you're working with him in those ways. And we'll get into all that detail as we get into the show. But as you know, and I'll speak from my own heart, I think Jim is the most committed, the most kind, the most humble human on planet Earth, at least one of the most. And it always amazes me, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. How does he have all the time to do this? What's his passion behind all of this? And we all have our passions, but I don't think anybody works as hard as Jim. And he's always out there promoting everyone. I've just published my fourth book, and he's like, oh, he's always, whatever it is that we're involved in, he's out there spreading the word. And I thought today could be kind of special. I told him I want this to sort of be a casual conversation where we're like in his living room, and I'm going to be just chatting with him and asking some questions. I've got some questions written down, but I don't know if I'll follow them completely. I think he might guide me through what I want to ask. But I hope you enjoy this new and very unique aspect of the man behind the curtain, a deeper dive on who is Uncle Jim. So let's begin, Jim. First thing I wanted to ask you, because I know you have such a big social media presence. Tell me and tell us, I guess we should say, tell us about the various platforms that you're on, because you have your own platforms, but then you belong to a number of groups that you post on too. Can you give us a little bit more of a flavor
Okay,
of that engagement?
sure. On Facebook, I run over 100 kidney groups. I have permission to approximately another 100 kidney groups to post there. I have 2 Instagram accounts. I have 2 Twitter accounts. I'm having a great time on a relatively new platform, Blue Sky, which I
Oh,
will recommend to all my friends and the audience. It's kind of a cool place to post because they don't have restrictions. They don't have rules. Everything you post comes with a pretty picture, and I'm really enjoying my experience on Blue Sky. Uh, YouTube, I have 3 WordPress accounts. I post on Tumblr, WhatsApp, Threads, LinkedIn, Snapchat, and at least until April, TikTok. So
wow.
those are the major places where I share my material.
And you have about 15 staff members, is that right?
No, no, no. I have me,
I know
myself,
you.
and
I know.
I.
But what you just said makes you think you at least have a couple people. So this is what's so amazing to those of us that follow you, Jim. It's just like, yeah, he wears all the hats. He does all of it, and it's not just his own little body of work. He's spread wide and deep, and we just appreciate that so much about you. Tell us a little bit more about your followers. Like, do you find that there are more patients that are hoping to get a transplant, or they're more like hoping to find a living kidney donor and get a transplant, or there are more transplant recipients, or there's just people with kidney disease, or do you have just like a flavor fanfare of all?
I basically have a flavor for all. If I had to put a more or less number on it, I would say by design, um, I tend to attract more kidney patients, more donors, more caretakers,
Okay.
that sort of thing. Um, I do try to make a point to bring in experts, particularly in the medical field, that have things to do with kidney disease. And I love to do things with uh, cutting edge type topics. Uh, for example, very early on, we were talking about xenotransplant. Very early on, we were talking about genetic testing. I had people come in. Basically, it's kind of like the groups that I create, Risa. If something strikes me as interesting, what I think to myself is, if I'm interested in it, maybe other
Yeah,
people will be too. And
absolutely.
so I try to bring that to people because it rings a bell with me. I'm thinking, maybe other people would be interested in this topic. And really, my hope is that someday people will say, how did Jim Myers do this? How did he present this? How did he do this in his broadcast? I want to go back and look at that.
Right.
So
And
that's my hope.
you remind me in many ways, many ways of the learning part, the aspect of wanting to learn more about especially new technologies or new procedures. But you don't just learn it, then you find the people that are best to present it and teach your viewers and your listeners and your followers, which we really appreciate, because you not only have the idea of, hey, this would be a good topic, but then you've got to find the people. Then you've got to find the people that'll say yes and be available. And you do research. You're doing these broadcasts, if your social media platforms weren't enough, now you're doing, not now, but you've been doing weekly broadcasts for how many years now? Are you doing these weekly
I,
broadcasts?
I think I started approximately in uh, 2019 with the broadcast. I've been making YouTube videos since 2013.
Wow.
I first got into the kidney advocacy thing 2012 to 2013. So around 2019, my best estimate is that I've done something like 150 to 200 interviews. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that there are about 350 or so videos on the YouTube channel. And some of the interviews I did, there were two or three people at a time.
Oh,
So, that's why there's a little bit of a flex in the number. But I really enjoy talking to my fellow kidney patients and uh, medical experts on particular topics. I'm basically an incurable student. If I had my way, I'd have never graduated from school. I just love being in school, and I love learning. And uh, this gives me the opportunity to take some of the things that I've learned or some of the things that I'm interested in and share them with my friends. And
exactly.
that's what I enjoy doing. And this does not work for me. Okay, don't misunderstand. Uh, this is a gas for me. I laugh and smile through the whole thing. I'm an incurable perpetual student, and I'm a insatiable educator, I guess would be the way that you'd put it.
I love that. And what is that expression? Love what you do, and you'll never have to work another day in your life.
Your life, exactly.
So there you are, Jim. This is you. Your picture's on that poster. Your passion just shines through so much of what you do. It really it moves those of us that are following you and attending the broadcasts and all the information that you glean and then share with us. So I want to speak on behalf of everyone and say thank you for your commitment, thank you for your time, and thank you for not being your last broadcast, because I think you've signed on until the last day you can actually speak and push the buttons behind the curtain. And we hope so anyway, that, because we look forward to these interviews and for you to get the professionals, the doctors, the physicians, the scientists, researchers, all these people that are involved and can take a deep dive, but also can explain it in a way that your audience can understand. We really do appreciate that. If you had to pick like a couple or even if one of many of your favorite interviews, maybe there's three that comes to mind, but even the first one that's coming to mind for you, if you had to pick your favorite, like, wow, that was really a great interview, I learned so much, I really think that came off well, what are you thinking right now? Who would that be? What would the
I
topic be?
I have several. My all-time favorite interview was Dr. Chabib from the Mayo Clinic. Dr. Chabib has polycystic kidney disease in his family. His father had PKD,
Oh,
passed from PKD. That's been his motivation to do research on polycystic kidney disease. Recently, he's presented a few broadcasts of his own from the clinic on that subject. Experts from the Mayo Clinic talking about polycystic kidney disease. Just a very eclectic interview. He's a very modest man for such an accomplished
mm,
individual, and real easy to talk to, and it just was very fortunate to get him on when I did. Another equivalent there is our good friend Valen Kiefer. There's nobody like Valen.
oh,
I used to say this, and Valen made the mistake of giving me an extra week to prepare. So I think her head is probably still spinning from the questions that I asked. But I've said this before. We've not encountered a kidney advocate like Valen for 100 years before she showed up, and you're not going to meet anybody like her again 100 years after she's gone. She's very positive, California sunshiny, and uh, brings an excellent perspective to her advocacy work. She's practically everywhere. She has her own podcast now that recently dropped. and I saw with ASN that they're helping to publicize the podcast, and she's already got
Nice.
over 1,000 views uh, on that podcast. And I can't wish Valen anything but well. She's just a tremendous spokesman for us, and I'm very, very pleased to have her as my friend. My very
Yeah.
best friend in the world is Kent Bressler from Kidney Solutions. I've had Kent on 3, 4 times. Uh, Kent is a preemptive kidney transplant from back in the day when people didn't even hear about preemptive kidney transplants. So, in plain English, what that means is he didn't spend any time on dialysis. He was transplanted before uh, dialysis. He used to be a nurse, he was in the service. He has a tremendous background and knowledge on kidney issues. He runs a group called Kidney Solutions. Uh, they have a group, a support group that meets every Monday evening. So if you're looking for help, uh, Kent through Kidney Solutions is helping people get transplants. And the thing that's unusual about Kent and his group is a lot of support groups, they kind of give up on you after you've been transplanted. Kent doesn't do that. He follows you, as long as you want him to be there. Parents of pediatric kidney patients. I had a parent that invited me to Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. And at that time, once a month, I was going down to IU Health to do blood work and to meet with my own post-transplant doctor. And the buildings are adjacent. I mean, they're joined together by a staircase. So I got invited down by Emily to come visit her little boy. And what a shocker, Risa. I went into this room, and I mean, it was huge, football stadium size room with all of these infants and young patients in cribs that were receiving dialysis treatment, including her son. And it had a real effect on me. And, I have 6, 8 groups that are just dedicated to children, and I've written frequently about pediatric kidney patients for that reason. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Mason. Mason is a pediatric kidney patient. I had his mom on the broadcast. He's back in the hospital again currently. Mason, get well soon. We need you out and healthy and bouncing around and causing your mother problems, buddy. So, we want you to be well. I did a broadcast recently with my friend Teresa Lindsay. This was the first of a kind broadcast. Teresa is a living kidney donor. She had someone lined up that she was going to donate to. That person ended up getting a direct kidney transplant from another source. She and Teresa were not a match. In the interim, Teresa's friend Ed contacted her and said that he needed a kidney. Teresa was obligated to this other person. After the person got the direct donation, Teresa got hooked up with Ed and his group, and they were working toward a kidney transplant. And like any other course of kidney transplant, the road to a kidney transplant is full of curves and potholes. Okay, it doesn't usually go flat, safe, and smooth, and that was the case. And there were several delays, and nonetheless, my friend Teresa stuck with it as a living kidney donor. When you know how they are, right? All the way along, the transplant centers. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? You don't have to do this. You can give up. You can walk away. We'll make excuses for you. Blah 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 blah. And my friend would not give up. And eventually, she did get the transplant accomplished. She and Ed are doing very, very well. And just a tremendous broadcast, a tremendous response to that broadcast. The highest response that I've had to a broadcast on YouTube comes from a police officer. His name is Jason McPhail, Jacyn. That's a broadcast that I did recently. Jason is seeking a kidney transplant. He has issues with obesity. He works with children in his work. Just a tremendous guy, gave a tremendous talk during the course of the broadcast. And the last but least of the memorable broadcast, I recently did a broadcast with Emily Wharton. Emily's been legally blind since she was a child, and she has kidney cancer. And it's one of those things that they think they have it under control right at the moment, but it could come back anytime. And Emily always has that concern about, does it come back? Will I survive? Life expectancy for these patients is crummy. Okay, that's the nicest thing I can say about it. Emily rose to the point that in her home state of Iowa, she was in charge of a blind persons group through the state government, and just has made tremendous strides in that area and done a lot for other blind people. So that was definitely a remarkable broadcast. So those broadcasts come to mind, and it's part of the reason that I continue to do this, because there are just certain remarkable people that do incredible things to help kidney patients and to further the cause of finding a cure for kidney disease. And in various areas that I just find interesting, and I'm hoping other people find it interesting as well. And it's not every day you get to talk to Risa Simon about her books and giving advice to other people and being a counselor, an advisor, a writer, an author. Oh my God, I never dreamed I would be able to do this. And like I said, for me, this ain't work, man. This is fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing it. So those broadcasts come to mind. I hope I didn't overlook anybody, and
There's probably
if I did, shame on me.
no. I only asked you to pick one and possibly a maximum three, so no one will feel bad because you included far more individuals. And I love how you sifted it down to the reason you love what you do, and the reason you love interviewing people is because of the extraordinary things that they do and what they're doing to help other kidney patients. But Jim, I include you in that because you are the mechanism that gets the information out there, and what you do, whether it be social media, broadcasting. Let's go into your advocacy work as an ambassador. I know you're
Okay.
engaged with a couple organizations. We share some of those platforms together, but you're everywhere. I mean, on the Hill or virtual, and I think you're like the main representative for Indiana. I always feel like I'm the Lone Ranger out here in Arizona. But tell us just a little bit more about your advocacy work and what drives your passion and that, and what's going on right now in our
Okay.
universe.
Well,
How that
March is coming up, so I have all kinds of meetings in March. Some of the groups I work with: the National Kidney Foundation, the American Association of Kidney Patients, the Polycystic Kidney Disease Foundation, the American Kidney Fund, the Chronic Disease Coalition, and Kidney Can. Now, I don't have kidney cancer myself, but I have too many friends that do, and that's how I got involved with that. I've been doing this since 2012, 2013, approximately 15 years. By Uncle Jim's incredibly bad math, um, I've been on the Hill live with my members of Congress approximately 40 times, virtual maybe 20 times more. And currently in March, for the NKF, the AAKP, the PKD Foundation, and the AKF. I have meetings that are either set or time has been set aside for those meetings,
Right.
or those meetings are going to be set. So I would say, I have one or two occasions maybe where I'm going to be in DC in person, and uh, the other times are all going to be virtual. The advocacy groups have picked up on the fact that they can save reimbursing us for plane fare, hotel fare, trying to feed Uncle Jim, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and still get the same basic intimacy with
Yeah.
virtual meetings. So a lot of virtual meetings at this point in time. Um, in some sense, that's a good thing, and it's in some sense you lose a little bit by not being there in person. But the thing I like the most about it is when you do virtual meetings, in between meetings, you have time to report back to your organization. You have time to reflect. You have time to change your pitch, maybe a little bit. Um, I had a heart attack last
Hmm.
August. I have 6 stents in my heart now. So when I get up and walk around, I'm breathing kind of hard from time to time. If I have to get on an airplane, or I have to go to DC, I have to take my rollator with me. Sometimes the organizations insist on putting me on a scooter, and I ride around on a scooter. Um, so that the virtual meetings don't take as much out of me personally, and
Exactly.
it means that I'll be able to do it a little bit longer. And if I had to rank the things that I do, posting kidney stories and doing live broadcasts and meeting with my members of Congress, the live broadcasts are number one, but the actual meeting with my members of Congress are like 1A. So
Yeah.
I enjoy doing that, and um, I enjoy the fact that we've made certain progress over the years, um, trying to the immunosuppressant drug bill
Yes.
is a very good
Behind me.
example.
Right.
Um, it's very important, the things that we do, and to play a role and have such a positive effect on kidney patients. There ain't no substitute for that, Miss Risa. There just isn't.
No.
And I love doing it. Again, it's not work. The only restrictions I have now are a little bit uh, with my health, but it's not going to stop me.
Yeah.
And we're going to
Well,
continue to do that as long as we can, probably longer than we should.
yeah. Well, again, so appreciate your passion, but you talk about virtual, of course. Um, I For me, maybe not most, but for me, I'm grateful for the virtual because, in addition to what you're talking about, whether it be mobility and the time, yeah, being in person and having that impact with most of the LAs is who you're usually meeting with. But I feel like even with my physician meetings that we're face to face. There's no, like a computer turned head or a person down the hall coming in and grabbing the doctor out. But back to advocacy, we're face to face. They have scheduled this time. They are locked and loaded, and we can get so many more meetings done. I'm thrilled to hear you have a little bit of time in between your sessions. For me, it's kind of like running from one session to the other, but running in my chair and just changing channels. But I love what you do. We all appreciate what you're doing. Our stories, your story. When the legislators can't hear and feel and touch, even if it's their screen, the reality of what kidney patients go through with this diagnosis, and then no cure, and then the best option being transplant and living to. There are initiatives that Jim, you and I have worked on for years, and unlike immunosuppressive, have not passed yet, like the Living Donor Protection Act, and
Protection
it's
Act.
just talk about a pet peeve for me. I don't know if you have any pet peeves on some of these initiatives or some of the work you do. Does anything come to mind when you're like, God, I wish we could just nail this
Yeah,
thing?
It's funny that you mentioned that, Risa. Um, I'll talk about pet peeves and I'll talk about the things that I really like. Um, Pet peeve. I hate it when someone looks at me and says, "You look fine. There's nothing wrong with you." I've had spouses that said that to me, and this is after watching my father pass away from the same disease that
Mm.
I have. I've had other people say that to me. I've had girlfriends say that to me, and I think that a lot of kidney patients feel the same way I do. I mean, look, you have to ask yourself, why do they take X-rays? Why do they do CAT scans? You know, why do they put you in that tube that makes all that loud
Horrific
noise,
noise.
and
All right.
they're trying to see your innards, right? So they want to see what's going on with my heart and my kidneys because it's not visible. So kidney disease is like that. It's not overtly visible. So I can look great on the outside and be really crummy on the inside. I mean, I have heart problems, I have kidney problems, I have ulcers. None of that stuff shows. I mean, it doesn't, and when people look at me, they say, the guy eats like a horse. He's always doing all this stuff. You wonder how I have the time to do this research. I have bad insomnia. I, you
Oh,
know, I,
welcome
I,
to
I
the
I
club.
sleep 2, 3, 4 hours a night. That's a magical night for me. For example, I had my morning posting that I usually do before the broadcast today, and we're doing an early broadcast today. Um, so I tried to go to sleep a little earlier than I normally would. I still woke up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I got all my morning posting done. I laid back down and wide awake for an hour, and all I could think about is, God, what am I going to say to Risa when she shows up? So um, that's part of the complex of kidney disease that we suffer from that is not apparent. So the "you look fine" thing, that's definitely a pet peeve of mine. Um, to talk about some things that are positive, uh, because I don't want to just be negative. Some things that are positive about kidney disease and the things that I do. I love cutting edge topics. I definitely want to present cutting edge topics or things that interest me. I mentioned genetic testing. I mentioned xenotransplantation. We've done programs on those things. I've mentioned pediatric kidney patients, an underserved, underpublicized group of kidney patients. Shockingly, they're our future. And the thought I was diagnosed when I was 25. The thought of being born with a polycystic kidney disease, the recessive version of PKD, ARPKD. Uh, and after my experience down at Riley's, it keeps me awake at night. I mean, I don't know how those children and their parents do it, but they do an excellent job of coping, getting through it, getting transplants. They have all of our adult issues and reflex, for example, some of their own special issues that are unique to child kidney patients. The other thing I want to say while you're asking me about positives, when I first started on dialysis at the age of 58, after watching my father pass away from being on dialysis, I was viewing dialysis as a death sentence.
Sure.
I originally thought, and uneducated, dumb ass Jim, dialysis is a death sentence. 5 years of this, and I'm dead. I'm going to die. And what I have found out is that's not true. you know, dialysis has been referred to from time to time as life dialysis. And that
Mm.
was keeping me alive in the 4 years that I was on in center hemodialysis. And I had to do in center hemodialysis, Risa, because I had issues with vertigo at the
Oh,
time. I had an operation on my ear, so that would stop. I don't hear well at all now out of
oh,
my right ear, but I don't have vertigo anymore, so it's a trade off.
yeah, that's
But
important.
what I found out um, is that dialysis kept me alive for 4 years so I could get a kidney transplant. I'm 8 years out now with my kidney transplant from IU Health, and the great Dr. William Goggins did my transplant. Here in Indiana, we call Dr. Goggins Dr. 3000 because he's done 3,000
Wow.
kidney transplants down
Okay.
at IU Health. Got to be some kind of record.
Yep.
He's been at this so long. His kid is actually working with him now, so that ought to give you some idea
Yeah.
of how long and how great he truly is. But what I found out is dialysis is not a death sentence. Basically, it's keeping you alive until you can
The
find
bridge.
some alternative means of renal replacement therapy. And in the
Right.
future, if that's a plastic kidney that you can go to Walmart and buy, that'd be great.
Yeah.
If if that's a genetically engineered pig someplace that xeno thing is blowing up, by the way. I mean, I don't know if people are paying attention, but man, that's blowing up. I mean, and people tend to think of that as like, they went to some hog farm and the pigs are eating slop and they're trying to give me a pig kidney, and that's nothing could be further from the case. These pigs are genetically engineered, and you are getting treatment with your xenotransplant to make sure that it's working. There's two recent xenotransplants that have lasted over 2-3 months now, so our fingers crossed that they finally solved that problem, because there's 90,000 people on the list waiting. And how many friends have you and I had that were healthy, got listed, were on the list, and passed away while they were waiting for a transplant? So any
Right.
kind of alternative is better than what we have now.
Yeah.
So, something happens to me and I get that choice, I'm telling you, I'm taking the pig.
Absolutely.
So
I'm
I'm not
taking
even going to question it. I'm taking the pig.
I'm
So,
I'm going back to I'm going back to your pet peeve because you and I have been friends for gosh, at least a decade. Um, and because I'm 15 years out now on my transplant. So I was trying to remember when we actually met through the PKD Foundation since we're fellow PKDers. But the pet peeve that I recall when I was interviewing you for the work I was doing for some of these kind of like little mini documentary videos, you may recall. And we were talking about being proactive, being your own best advocate, and preemptive opportunities. So you talked about Kent, and you know about other people, including me, preemptive, live donor. And when we were talking, especially because PKDers are so good as far as being a candidate worthy of a preemptive transplant, that I recall you saying to me that, and this was not unusual. I learned through the foundation's conferences myself, but I recall you telling me that no doctor had ever encouraged you to do this, suggested that you do this. So to me, when I think pet peeves and I think of my friend Jim, I think, okay, I'll tell you my pet peeve that I'm sure is his pet peeve, that no one was encouraging you to take that path early. And so thank you for saying what you said about dialysis. That's important for people that don't have that option. And they may never have a transplant option either. And it is a bridge. But if you can do due diligence and be proactive, but you need to have the people you trust pushing you along because you don't know that that's a better way.
yeah, it's good that you bring that up. No, I was never advised about preemptive kidney transplant whatsoever. In fact, the first group of nephrologists that I had were the same group of nephrologists that my dad had here
Mm,
in Northwest Indiana, and they had an office and a dialysis lab right next to each other, adjacent to each other, and they had a glass wall in between their office and their dialysis center. And they would take people over to the glass wall and they would say, if you don't listen to us, if you don't do what we tell you, if we're not your exclusive kidney doctors, this is where you end up. I mean, that's the
Unbelievable.
kind of sadist that I had originally. So,
Unbelievable.
yeah, not only didn't they advise me about preemptive kidney transplant, um, they tried to do the same thing to me that they did to my dad. They tried to limit me to that particular a group, and they tried to scare me. And what I learned from working with my father and being with my dad was this: I don't rely on any one nephrologist anymore. If I get sick, I need a local nephrologist here to look after me while I'm in the hospital. But I also have my post transplant nephrologist down in Indianapolis that follows me, and I see him every 3, 4 months. I see my local guy every 2 months or so, and I do labs every month. So they both get the labs and they can keep up with me and make sure I'm being a good boy and all that kind of happy stuff. But I, we're talking about being proactive and being your own best advocate. That's part of the way that I do it. Is I try not to rely on any one nephrologist in particular. And I would recommend, I have heart problems, I have stomach problems. I would recommend to our audience that if you feel the need, don't hesitate to get a second opinion. Don't hesitate to ask. It doesn't really cost any more money, and your peace of mind and your health, your safety that's the forefront. That's got to be your major concern. And I have doctors that work together. It's not an adversarial thing. Um, so I wouldn't hesitate to do that.
But you're a partner with those doctors. And I think that's what you're saying, Jim. That's what I'm hearing. And that's what's so
Yeah,
important.
yeah, absolutely.
We have to our voice needs to be included, our concerns, our worries, the research that we do on our own. Again, they're probably, oh God, here comes Risa, internet MD. Um, but still, I think those that have emotional intelligence will at least engage. They need to engage to build the trust. But I love what you said about sort of building a team, whether it be 2 or 4, whatever it is. But you're not relying on one individual unless you just would walk to the end of the earth for that one individual because they've already proved to you that they are the end all be all. But yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that to the audience because it's important. They might think, oh, well, that's my doctor and that's what he said or that's what he didn't say. So I'm just going to follow. And you end up sleepwalking your way to dialysis and possibly dying on dialysis or, just if you're on the list, not getting an opportunity to actually get that transplant. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. You talked about your dad, and we really didn't get into. You said you were diagnosed at age 25, I believe you said, and
Right.
you watched like my father passed in his early 40s. I don't recall your dad's age, but tell us a little bit about that experience because I know whether you knew you had the disease or not when your dad was sick, it's a whole nother journey for those of us that have a genetic disease. So please tell us a little bit about your experience and how that fuels your passion for what you do today.
Sure. There were 5 people in my family that had polycystic kidney disease. All of them the dominant version, except for my cousin Rich. He had the recessive version,
Oh,
and that includes my dad. I found out that my dad was polycystic while I was in law school. Um, we were very close. I identified more with my father in a lot of ways than I did with my mom. My dad was in the grocery business in Cedar Lake. I worked for my dad all through high school, um, through college, up until the time that I started working with other lawyers. So we were very close. And the last month of his life, my dad was hospitalized here in Hammond, Indiana at St. Margaret's Hospital, which is now closed, but at that time it was a viable hospital. And I was working for Leonard Ring in Chicago at that time, a big shot personal injury lawyer who's a historical figure in personal injury law. And I took that whole month off to spend time with my dad. And I would go to St. Margaret's every day to see him. And my dad was one of the first people in Northwest Indiana to undergo peritoneal dialysis. He had been doing in center for a period of years, and he was one of the first guys they experimented on with PD. And one of the things that they asked him to do would be to go talk to other potential patients about going on PD and the virtues of PKD and the fact that, or PD, I'm sorry, and the fact that, you know, he was able to work and go down to his grocery store and do the things that he normally did. And here he is in the hospital, just sick as hell, the last month of his life. And they asked him to go down the hall and speak to a patient about peritoneal dialysis. And I happened to be there that day. So they gave us an old rickety wheelchair made out of wood. And I got my arm under my father's two arms, and I'm wheeling him down in this rickety old wooden wheelchair on a zigzag because I'm having trouble going straight. And we get to this guy's room, and my dad is talking to this guy about peritoneal dialysis. Now, my mother and I were both extroverts. I've never had trouble speaking in my entire life. I have the other problem. I don't know when to shut up. And my dad was different, though. He was raised in an era where children were seen and not heard. And he was not an extrovert. He was an introvert. You could go out to dinner with my dad, sit there for 2 hours, and if you didn't carry the conversation, there might be no conversation.
Wow.
So he was, and plus he was ill. So he was with this guy, and he stammered and he struggled, and he just had problems speaking, and you could tell he was very uncomfortable. But he got through his pitch, and by the time he was done, he was exhausted, and I had to use both arms to take him back to his room. They had to use a Hoyer lift to put him back into his bed. And my dad passed away. It couldn't have been 10 days later. Originally, when I thought about this, it made me mad as hell. I thought, you know, they used my dad. They didn't take good care of my dad. They knew this, or they should have known this. But since I've had to deal with the advocacy thing myself, I've come to realize that if my dad didn't want to do this, he didn't have to. So somewhere along the line, he must have consented to do this. He must have agreed to it. This has been my motivation as an advocate from the beginning. I thought to myself, if your father can do this with all of his restrictions and his illness, and his desire was so great to do this that he was willing to do this during the last month of his life, and you've been given a gift of a transplant, the advocacy thing, you have to do this. You have to do this to honor your father and your Aunt Edna, your Aunt Dorothy, your cousin Rich, my Uncle Perce, all the people in my family that had polycystic kidney disease. So you were asking about my advocacy. That's one aspect of the story. The other story that I can tell you, when I was on dialysis, there was a movement to cut funding to dialysis centers. There were potential laws that had been put forward and could have been passed. And there was no question because I could hear them talking, the nurses, the techs, the dietitian, the counselors, even the person that ran they were all afraid they were going to get cut.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sitting there on dialysis, relatively healthy. I drive myself there back and forth. I can stand out of my car, walk in. They do the thing with the weight, the standing and sitting blood pressure before, the standing and sitting blood pressure afterwards. And I'm one of the healthiest guys and the youngest guy and I'm looking around at my fellow dialysis patients. Okay. They're coming in by ambulance. They're all in wheelchairs. They're all in walkers. Some people they bring on like a bed type wheelie thing, and that's the way that they do their dialysis. Some people were amputees. I had 4 people while I was on dialysis that passed away right before my eyes. One lady, I could have reached out and touched her. That's how close she was when she passed. And these bastards have the nerve to try and cut their service. Man, I was angry. And I'm going to tell you something. As an attorney and as an advocate, I did my best work when I was pissed off. And I got angry. And I decided, the hell with these guys. I'm not going to allow this. I'm the only healthy one here that's healthy enough and has a big enough mouth to do anything about this. So I joined the NKF. I joined the AAKP. I gave interviews. I wrote articles in the newspaper. I prepared petitions. I prepared proclamations. I had things that people could sign that we could send into their members of Congress to say, we don't want this. We're not gonna do this. And I'm not the only one that's doing this, by the way, at this time. I don't want to take like full credit for this or anything, but because of our efforts, the people in the Congress that were in charge at the time decided to put these cuts off.
Good.
And that's when I began to realize, not only do you have the personal motivation to do this, but you have some success now. You have some good results now. And there are other issues, there are other people that really need you. They need you to stand up. It reminds me, when I was a lawyer, I would represent people in personal injury cases, accident cases, products liability, medical malpractice cases, the Klein Avenue Bridge collapse cases, construction cases. Some of those people didn't speak very well for themselves. They were like my father. Some of those people couldn't put 10 sentences together if their life depended on it.
Right.
They had to rely on you. And once I decided to take that responsibility as a trial lawyer, before I got sick, I began to realize that is an awesome responsibility. And I brought that over to my focus as a kidney advocate, because once you take on the responsibility to represent your fellow kidney patients, that is an awesome responsibility. And that is a responsibility that I accept with relish.
I love it.
I only want good results for my fellow kidney patients. I learned this week, I had 2 more friends that passed away. And
Mm,
I ran a group with one of those friends. She's been gone for a while, and I didn't realize it.
mm.
I looked at the group that I ran, and she hadn't posted in a long time. So I went to her personal page and checked it out. She was gone. There was a lady I had on my broadcast 2, 3 times. She had been waiting for a transplant at IU Health the same way that I had been waiting. She was on dialysis. That lady passed away last week. So
I love the
when
fire. I love the fire in your belly. I have to insert this. I just love the fire in your belly because I think that's what you have to be an advocate, to move the needle, to create change and need for change. And I believe the universe kind of brings our destiny, whether it be our medical journey or whatever. Like, you were in law and you had all your background expertise, Jim, allowed you to not only be an educated man, but a man who could be assertive enough and articulate enough to speak on behalf of others. And I think that's so huge. And you had the personal motivation from watching your dad suffer and all the people suffering in your dialysis center. To me, I just think that brings together, like, you were chosen to do this. I feel oftentimes that I am too. Those of us that are really strong advocates, we don't, like you said, you love what you do, and those who love what they do never work a day in their life. Well, you're working hard. I know I'm working hard, but we don't talk about it as work. We're not complaining. You've never complained in your life that I've known you, and you are on purpose. You are on task, and that's why what you do is so impactful. I know that we are at the bewitching hour here, and I just, on behalf of everyone, I don't know if there's something, I know I cut you short in your sentence there. If you need to finish something,
it's okay.
please do. But I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to thank you for your work, because you're just doing. And when you talked about a pet peeve and then a positive, I hope you look at those positives of things that and you did get to that you are, you're achieving these things not just for yourself, mostly for others. And know that we appreciate you and that you deserve the honor of this interview today. I know it wasn't something you necessarily wanted to do, but gosh, when you think about everything, a lot of people don't know your back. They don't know that you were a lawyer. They don't know about your dad. Maybe some of them don't even know you had PKD, and all the work, all the social media platforms, and all the groups, and all the advocacy, and then the weekly broadcast. I don't know how you juggle it all, honestly. And like I said, also, you have a staff of 15, right? No, it's just Jim, Uncle Jim, Jim, and Uncle Jim. But please, if you have some final words, let's hand this over to you so you can wrap up your broadcast. But I want to
Okay.
thank you for the privilege of interviewing you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you giving me this platform, Risa. One of the questions you didn't get to ask me is how I want to be remembered.
Yes, please.
I want to be remembered as a tireless, motivated kidney advocate and educator. I want to be remembered as someone that tried very hard to make things better for my fellow kidney patients. If I could ask what people need to do in response to my efforts, it's very, very simple. Take my broadcast, take my kidney stories, take the things that I share with you, like them, and share them with someone else.
Yes.
Share them not only with our fellow kidney patients, but share them with lay people, because there are 90,000 of us on that wait list to get a
Yep.
kidney transplant, and they convert maybe somewhere between 20 and 27,000 people a year, depending on whose numbers you believe. And 12 to 13 people die every day on that list, and 12 to 13 people are added almost every minute of every day to that list. So we have to find a way to help our fellow kidney patients extend their life. And I did want to say one other thing before I close up. People ask me from time to time, where do you find your kidney stories? Where do you find your kidney information, the things that you post about? Are you researching this stuff every day? No, I use Google alerts. If I
Right,
start
yeah.
a group or I pick a group and it's on a particular topic, I create a couple of Google alerts on that topic, and every day Google sends me these articles, and I get to choose between the articles, the things I want to post, and the things I want to share, and where I want to post it. So if you're interested in a particular subject and you want to keep up with it, I would recommend to all my friends to use Google Alerts to do that, because they'll send you the stuff in your email automatically, and it's much easier to keep up with particular subjects that way. And if you're interested in a subject like that and it's part of your heart, as Risa said, we feel that we were chosen to do this. I look at all the things that occurred in my life from the time of my birth until now, and I didn't realize it at the time, but this is what I was meant to do.
Absolutely.
This is my focus. So if you feel that way about something, then that's what you focus on. And if you feel that way about kidney advocacy, you focus on that. You have questions, you have concerns, you want to know more about advocacy, don't even hesitate. Contact me. I'm not that hard to find. kidneystories@hotmail.com. That's my email account. I'm all over social media. I'm all over Facebook, Jim Myers, Myers. Any kind of problem or concern, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm happy to help.
So good. So good. Again, thank you, Jim, for all that you do.
Thank you for taking time.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Let's get together on the next broadcast and talk about your new book.
Okay. It's a deal. You might get
All
Glenna on
right.
there too.
Absolutely. Love to have you both. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our broadcast for today. I will be preparing the replay so you can check it out at our normal time or any time hereafter. Be on Facebook, be on YouTube. And I'd like to thank Risa for giving me this opportunity to shoot off my big mouth. And great questions today, Risa. And next
Answers.
week, what are we doing next week, Jim? Tell the people. Um, Next week, our friend Chet, the Beauty King Bennett, is coming on. Chet runs a number of beauty salons in his area, but he is a dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore kidney advocate. He was named the equivalent of the Advocate of the Year by the American Kidney Fund, and he has plenty to say. He's written plenty, and he YouTube videos all over, and it's going to be one interesting broadcast. I don't want you to miss it. So, you want to check that out. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank my friend Risa, and I will definitely see everybody again next week. So you have a good week, and thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.